that's a big part about storytelling. It's like being able to express that. We went down this path of doing this, and this was the result, and being able to show the positive results. And there are times where you do things too, and you say, well, it just didn't work out as expected. But I think that's a lot about it. Just simply looking at numbers, raw numbers, or even charts with no context. It's not meaningful. So there's a lot to be said about really explaining what you're seeing, within the data itself.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they use data to solve the world's problems. We're highlighting different careers, different skill sets available out there for those that are interested in using data. With us today, we have Michael Meyer. How are you today, Michael? Good.
Doing very well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on the show today. So we usually start our show by asking people what their origin stories are to understand how they got to where they are today to be the amazing data professional that they are. So could you please tell us about your background?
Yeah. So my background is when I got out of high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Had aspirations of being a writer, but also had aspirations of making some money. So I didn't know what to do. So I actually went to a technology school and was able to get within a year, a programming certificate, and landed at 19, landed my first job working at a medical software company. And so it was very interesting learning all the different things with that. But I think what really got me going into data, at first, I thought of data as this transactional thing, right? So we had to use it to record, like taking somebody's appointment. Well, you need the information about their appointment. Great, name, blah, 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 and all that stuff. But then after a period of time, we had a actual retired doctor on staff, and he was doing all of these interesting things, helping clinics be able to market themselves. And it's like, so he was using data in so many different ways, and then taking in them and then showing them how they could improve their business, and then coming back and then, being able to show that progress. And so that right then, I think that was the moment I was hooked with data.
That's awesome. I love how there's always like some pivotal moment for people that are like, wow, that's data. Let's get into that.
Yeah, most definitely. And it was so funny is I think the other part was as I started to do, I think it was where I was requested to work on some management reports, and I looked at them. It was like, okay, it's just basic information. But then I looked at it a little bit closer and said, well, but if I did some things, I could actually start grouping things by age ranges of the patients and by all these different demographics. And so at that point in time, had no idea what a dimension was, of course, but that's really what I was doing, was being able to take one thing and break it up dimensionally and get more value out of it. And so then I think that was kind of the secondary thing, that it was just like, okay, there's a lot of power in data. It's just not this transactional thing for, recording something such as, like I said, an appointment or like an order in a system. So.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do right now? What is your current title and your roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, so this is kind of a change of pace. I've been in technology for over 35 years on the technical side. So various roles, whether it's a programmer, architect, data architect, things like that. And in this last year, I now am a technical product marketing manager for Elation. And we're a data intelligence platform that we work, helping to promote data literacy through a data catalog and through data governance.
Nice. So those are some huge points of interest and importance for the data community, being data governance and data literacy, right?
Yeah, it's, it still is, a lot of times I'll think, I worked actually prior to joining Elation, I worked at a company, an organization where we use the software. And so just, being able to try to work with one company to actually help enable them with the use of data, and then I saw the potential of, well, how can I do this with more, a lot more companies. And so Elation seemed to be a good fit. The marketing side was interesting because, again, the whole thing about really being able to, even as an individual organization, in order to get your data literacy program going, you really have to do a lot of your own internal marketing communication. And so I thought, well, that could be again, just a natural progression of what I really like to do. And that's, helping others achieve things with data. And so that's how I kind of got into the role. So
yeah, sounds like a good fit then.
So far, so good. Yeah.
That's good. What are your favorite data problems to solve?
Ooh, that's a good one. The things that I find interesting are a lot of times personally, the things that interest me are like a lot of the things I do on my hobbies and stuff like that. And that's just kind of understanding from like the website, how to grow things, how to get more people interested in what you're doing. And I think that kind of spills over to being able to look at that. I really like to be able to understand marketing analytics and see what things are working for people, what people really are gravitating towards, and what messaging and what things, so to speak, didn't hit the mark. And so doing things like that. In prior things, a lot of my time was spent where I got a lot energized was just being able to show people when they are able to ask a question and be able to show them how we can solve it with the data that we have provided them and get them started. So like it was very rewarding. One time I was working with a financial analyst and was pretty good with data, but was very new. They wanted to do a lot more like with being self-service. And so they with just in a couple of months became just working with Power BI and created unbelievable departmental dashboards and stuff. And that just grew over time. And so I think that's, anything that comes to light of basically being able to improve your business and be able to actually monitor. I love being able to solve those problems with data.
Yeah. Self-service is a big buzzword, and there are a lot of people that are out there, a lot of companies that are trying to provide that to their consumers of data, right? Mm-hmm. What is your experience or tips on how you make self-service successful?
Yeah, and in doing so, I think a lot of it, first of all, is people have to be able to understand first of all, they got to know that it's out there to be able to find the information, right? Yep. Second is understanding it. And so that's such a key, right? Because in today's world, in organizations, a lot of times I always will bring up the story where as a business intelligence developer, there was one gentleman, I would always go to him for all the questions about, well, how does this work on the data? How does this work? Because I was building out a bunch of projects. And I didn't have the information anywhere documented, right? And when the gentleman left, I'm like, oh, now what? And so I think the whole notion of, having this tribal knowledge that goes out the door, you really need to be able to capture that so that everybody can kind of get the value of it, right? So I think that's the key so that people can understand it. And then the other thing I always kind of lean into is then, it's like anything else. So when you're, if you're going to do self-service, you got to know that whatever you're producing is correct, right? Because you don't want to get in front of your manager or even higher up and all of a sudden go like, they look at it and go, there's no way those numbers can be correct. Where did you get those from? And so there's a little bit too about that and understanding so that people can trust what you're presenting to them. So those are the keys, with some of the tools and stuff that's out there. It still is, I think, challenging, but the more that we get towards things like being able to ask questions truly with natural language of the data that's structured correctly, I think that's truly where self-service has to be in order to serve the masses of people.
Absolutely. And in terms of having the data be correct, right? Are there any extra processes that you go into to make sure that the data up front at the beginning of the pipeline is correct before even starting to build out the BI
yeah, solution? Yeah, and that's a big thing. And so the one thing I've noticed in the last 2 years, and I can't remember which studies to cite them correctly, but the two key things people on people's minds in the world of data were data quality and data governance. And so when you think about it, data quality does have to start at the source. If you're trying to fix it always on the back end, you're going to continually, in your warehouse, whatever, you're going to continue to struggle. So it's about understanding and putting rules, in place. And so, so that you can kind of start to catch those. And I've worked on a few projects, and all we did, I mean, it can start out as simple as just building some SQL statements, right? Just to check some things out, those checks to make sure that things are what they're supposed to be. Hey, is this always my favorite? Is this a valid email address, phone number, and address? Because if I'm trying to contact this customer and none of those are valid, now what? I really don't, I'm, pretty well in a bad place because I can't contact them. So just getting started, building the rules. But nowadays, there's so many tools out there in the world of, you'll hear data quality and data observability, that you have a lot of options to go out and start to really roll those out. But the key is, like you said, is you got to catch it at the source and fix it at the source, because if you don't, it's going to be continually a nightmare that will haunt you on and on and on. So, yeah.
I love that. We're entering spooky season, so I love the haunting shout outs.
Oh yeah, I mean, you'll love this one. So my name is Michael Meyer, not Michael Myers, but I get a lot of that from the Halloween. Yeah.
Yes, I am sure. I was going to ask you, is October your favorite month of the year because of your name?
Yeah, definitely. And because my neighbors, they have the display they put on, they build a lot of their stuff and they get a lot of stuff. So 2 years ago, I'm walking by and I'm looking in their front yard and they have all these tombstones. And there was Michael Myers' tombstone in their front yard. So I'm like, I think I said to somebody, if you can't find me, check the neighbor's yard. So, yeah. But,
oh my gosh. Be careful about that. You might get the cops called on you.
Yeah, that would be funny.
That's hilarious. I love that so much. A little earlier, you mentioned something about your hobby and some data that you use in your hobby. So at this time, I think I want to get into the official fun bits.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so my hobby is writing, and actually it started, almost about 8 years ago when I actually went on my first craft beer tour of a brewery. And so I immediately it was about the stories about like how the buildings that the breweries ran, how the people got into brewing and all that. And so with my oldest, I started telling the stories. He goes, well, why don't we just create a website and you can start writing blogs about it? And so writing was always something I enjoyed doing. So then now capturing these stories is just been a fun passion. And then, like I said, and also from the data geek in me is tracking like what stories are the ones that people are really, that they really gravitate towards, whether it's through reads, comments, shares, sharing them out to other people and things like that. And so, yeah, so that passion's turned into a couple books. And then I also write for a magazine in Nebraska, in Omaha, called Dine, D-I-N-E, Nebraska magazine. So.
Okay. And I saw you have another magazine too, Edge. What is?
Yes, and that's a lifestyle magazine, and which is crazy. It's coming up on its 10th year in October. So, so many good articles besides things there. We do a lot of passion stories. We do a lot with our local youth. We have youth stories and all kinds of other things too in there. So it's a really well written publication, and the founder, she's had a huge passion for writing in print forever, and so it's great to be part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are the books that you published?
So there are two just craft beer books about my home state of Nebraska. So the first one was really about how I got started, and then about 10 different breweries that were in there, but just kind of, again, showing my fictional character that I used to write the stories, a little bit about him and what he why he was doing the things that he was, doing, and why he enjoyed it so much. And then the second one was, over the years, people have given me all these different like craft beer review books, and I'm like, okay, and they're pretty cut and dry, I'll just say it, boring. I mean, they're just numbers and just straight up facts. And so I wrote one that actually had some stories written around them, so like fun little quirky stories that went around them, or had things like fun facts about the brewers. Hey, did you know this brewer before coming into the industry worked as in the office of one of our U.S. senators, or this one was a musician in this band for several years, things like that some people wouldn't know. So the fun part, other than just the hardcore facts about what that particular beer is about. So I think there was even a Christmas story in there, and it gets a little bit going. So yeah, Santa and his sleigh. So anyhow.
Is Santa throwing back some craft beers as well?
Yeah, and he was responsible and parked the sleigh for the night and stayed at the establishment. So yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
So you would very much consider yourself to be an expert storyteller then, right?
Yeah, I always, it's funny I think I learned it at a young age. It was getting time spending with my grandpa. And so he was this storyteller that like right away, like within the first couple minutes, whatever he was talking about, you're like glued. It's like, I don't know. He had a way of just pulling you in quickly. And he talked a lot about family and stuff in the past. And then he also talked just about things around Omaha and how it had changed over the years and different things. And so it was always so, I just got so excited to be able to sit down and be able to talk to him about things like that. And so when I started thinking about writing, it's like, it's more about that storytelling. So when I write an article or I write a blog, the first paragraph is really about that hook as to try to get people pulled in about what's going on, whether it's, again, something that I remember from the past. There was one story I remember vividly about going out to this part of the state and staying at this camp that was near where up the road was where the brewery was at, and saying all that. And it was very fun that the camp owner's daughter reached out and said, yeah, Dad's no longer with us, but he would have loved to read your stories. She said it brought back so many good memories. And so to me, that's the part of storytelling, just not, being all about facts and stuff like that. It's wrapping it in something that people can, get more out of it and kind of get that vision of what you were thinking about and what goes into what was the subject was about.
Absolutely. In storytelling, just as a general skill, is very helpful for data professionals too, right? So how has this kind of transitioned into your role as a data professional?
Yeah. So one of the things as early on, like I was saying, is finding different ways of expressing different views about data, right? Over the years, as things came about, it was about being able to, like from a visualizations perspective, I always remember, thinking about, well, what resonates when you look at something, what resonates to you that stands out that you can get, and then actually point that out and drill deeper and tell the story around what you're seeing. And so I think that was kind of the key in being able to, because data, there's, whether it's a trend or an anomaly or something, there's always going to be some kind of story around that. What did we just do that shifted the business to now all of a sudden, if you're not in the know of something that was going on in the business, right, to make that happen, that trend change. And so I think that's a big part about storytelling. It's like being able to express that. We went down this path of doing this, and this was the result, and being able to show the positive results. And there are times where you do things too, and you say, well, it just didn't work out as expected. But I think that's a lot about just simply looking at numbers, raw numbers, or even charts with no context. It's not meaningful. So there's a lot to be said about really explaining what you're seeing, within the data itself.
Something that I always ask all my guests is around learning, because especially in the field of data, since things constantly change all the time, you're basically learning something new every day. And so what are your go-to resources for when you're learning something new?
Yeah. So first of all, I guess the first thing I do every day is I spend 10 to 15 minutes kind of looking through whether I subscribe to a lot of different groups that, put out newsletters and stuff about information. So I pick up on one of those topics, and may start to read. I think, back a few years ago, it was like when data mesh all of a sudden come out, so then you see that topic come out. It's like, oh, what's this? So you start to research it. Then as if you get more interested and want to go deeper, then I'm truly one about grabbing a book or things like that, just to kind of get started. And then it's all about hands-on to try to really drive it home. So like things in the past, you get that entry point. I remember like with Snowflake. And so I started, bit by bit learning Snowflake through. Also another good learning tool is if they have like small classes, like online classes, right? You just take a little bit and then you run with it. And so, yeah, but most of mine is, self-guided learning, I would say. I've had classes in the past. It just doesn't seem to be as much of a thing nowadays. And like you said, because things are changing so fast, you just have to kind of be able to keep up with it. But I always tell everybody, if you can spend, 10 to 15 minutes a day, because it's well worth it to keep up with what's going on around you. And that's truly how you can learn the new things. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And so do you apply your learnings to any personal projects that you have?
A lot of times. Yeah. And so I look to see how I can do them with whatever job I'm currently working at. Or I think we talked about this. SEO has been one of those things. And there's a lot of, data that goes into trying to understand that. And so I was like, with the magazine websites, just trying to understand more about like what drives us, and so being able to pick up a book and say, okay, read it, get some things out of it. Let's implement. Let's try a couple of these things. What does it move the needle, so to speak, and things like that. And so, yeah, that's kind of the approach I go. And things like over the years, like I've architected a lot of different things and different systems is to work with others, come up with those architectures. And actually a long time ago, I was working at a leasing software company. And so we had all the things we want to do from the database side and some from the things like that. But the overall architecture, it was all new stuff. Funny, .NET, Microsoft.NET was when it first came out. But we went to Microsoft Technology Center in Chicago and actually had others review our architecture to see, poke holes in anything that was wrong with it. So there's all these different venues of learning. And I say, when you get opportunities for people that have knowledge in something that you're very interested in, it's great to be able just to spend a little bit of time with them, because I think you can learn as much from them in a short period of time as you can sometimes, reading tons of books too. So.
Very true. Very true. Do you have any final words of encouragements or any other recommendations for the listeners?
Yeah, I just think it's everything today is still moving so fast, but there's still so many opportunities when it comes to working with data and using it in your daily lives. One of the things I'm excited to see, and I know is being able to see more and more. Someday I would like to see it even at the high school level taught, so where data literacy is a class like, English or math or whatever, right? Because as you come into this world, it's amazing now how everybody's job, there's some aspect of it that's works with data. And so being able to get a good understanding of that, I think is really critical. And so, yeah, that's kind of a side self passion. And I think it's because of also with the company I work at, we're so excited to help people become, that data-driven organization that it down the road, what we want to do is, empower each generation, every generation coming up to get better and better using data.
Mm-hmm. I would love to see a data literacy class somewhere in high school. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think so too. I really do. Because I think it would get certain students that I had a nephew that was interested in math, but then he started asking me what I did for a job. And so then kind of tying the two together, he saw that that could be a good career, So yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be introduced, or I think it is being introduced earlier and earlier, because I didn't even realize data was a thing until I started my professional career after college. So now there are university degrees in data. So it's getting there. It's getting there.
Yeah, it's just taking it down, keep taking it down another level, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Someday we'll have, kids on their cell phones. The 3 and 4-year-olds will be talking more about data. We'll have little data geeks running around and telling each other stories. And then we know we hit the mark, right?
Absolutely. I'm just imagining what kind of data conversations the little kids are going to have.
You took 10% of my Oreos last week. I want them back.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so very much, Michael, for coming on the show and sharing all of your wonderful knowledge with us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, and I do love watching your podcast. You have so many great guests, so thanks for including me.
Thank you so much. If any of the audience wants to ask you any questions, where can they find and or follow you?
Oh, yeah. So, my main would be LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a great place. And then you can also, if you're into craft beer and want to ask questions or on that side, it's joejavastout.com.
Awesome. And I'll provide those links in the show notes.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you again for being on the show.
Awesome. It's great. Had a great time. Thank you.
And as always, folks, happy learning.